And welcome everyone. I'd particularly like to welcome the members of the Interfaith Council who are going to come and open our with a blessing. So, Manjit Mustanza, welcome.
Morning, Your Worship. Morning, councillors. The holy month of Ramadan began on the 12th, 13th of April, and it'll go for 30 days. And we are using the occasion of Ramadan to say a Muslim Islamic prayer. Mustanza is our secretary for the Interfaith. He's also an imam, and pass it on to Mustanza.
Okay. Morena, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuhu. May the peace and blessings of God Almighty be upon you. So millions of Muslims across the world are currently spending this holy Islamic lunar month of Ramadan in fasting. And whilst focusing on our spiritual, moral and physical well-being from dawn to dusk, among other things, we abstain from food and drink. It is human nature that we don't truly appreciate the value of something until we either lose it or experience or see the pain of others who don't enjoy that luxury. Therefore, one of the primary reasons behind the institution of fasting is mentioned in the Holy Quran as لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, that so that you may be grateful. Anyways, with this short introduction, before I begin the karakia, I want us all to think of some of the things we enjoy and often take for granted. There are millions of people who are visually impaired, for example, or blind, yet most, if not all of us, are blessed with eyesight. We can hear, we can communicate. We have been blessed with health and wealth. We also know of the devastating conditions in other parts of the world with the global pandemic, with unprecedented loss of life, for example, currently in India. And we are very fortunate to enjoy our daily freedoms without these worries here. So keep these things in mind during the prayer, and also keep in mind all our fellow human beings, our brothers and sisters around the world. Finally, before beginning the karakia, keep in mind, when I say Allah, this is an Arabic term for the Almighty God, the Creator and Sustainer, and I am only praying before that one and only God. All praise belongs to Allah, Lord of all the worlds, the gracious, the ever merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. Thee alone do we worship, and Thee alone do we implore for help. Guide us on the right path, the path of those who you have blessed, not of those who have incurred your displeasure, nor of those who have gone astray. O Lord of the universe, we cannot justifiably thank you for the limitless bounties you have showered on us. You are exceedingly gracious and merciful. You have granted us countless favors. Forgive our sins so that we are not annihilated. Infuse our hearts with your pure love so that we attain life. Conceal our sins and enable us to do such deeds that draw forth from your pleasure. We seek refuge in your gracious countenance from your wrath. Have mercy on us and protect us from the evils of this world and the world of the hereafter, as every blessing and favor is in your hands. O our Lord, guide our hearts towards goodness, O Allah, and establish reconciliation amongst us. Show us the path to peace. Deliver us from darkness and guide us to the light. Save us from evil deeds and mischief, whether they are manifest or hidden. O Lord, bless our eyes, our ears, and our hearts. Bless our spouses and children, and incline towards us with mercy. Surely you accept repentance and are oft returning with mercy. Make us thankful for your blessings. Make us acknowledge and accept your beneficence and accomplish that bounty for us. O our Lord, make this city a city of peace. Our Lord, bestow on us mercy from yourself and provide for us right guidance in our affair. Our Lord, bestow wisdom on us and join us with the righteous, and give us a true reputation amongst posterity, and make us from among the inheritors of the gardens of bliss. Our Lord, forgive and have mercy, and you are the best of those who show mercy. Our Lord, grant us good in this world and in the next, and protect us from the torment of the fire. O our Lord, accept this prayer from us, for you are all-hearing, all-knowing. Ameen. Thank you.
With your permission, could I say, make two requests?
Go for it.
Thank you. We have been, since March, visiting places of worship in Wellington. The last place we visited was the Al-Amin Mosque in Newlands. In May, we'll be going to Sikh Temple in Nanai. I know it's out of your jurisdiction geographically, but people from Wellington go to pray there. I'll be making a request for your worship and the councillors to join us for that visit. It's the first time probably that the mayor of Wellington will be visiting the temple. We have mayors from the hut who have gone to the temple. So request that you make a special effort, if you can, for that visit. Our second request is, I was just mentioning to Councillor Diana that we are doing a prayer for India. It cannot be done under the interfaith at the moment because it's only for one particular group of people. It's not universal. It's coming under another hat that I wear, or another turban that I wear, Ekta, but with the collaboration of the interfaith. We'll be making a request to all of you to also attend that. We think India needs our blessings as well and your praise. Thank you.
Manjit and Stenza, thank you. If you could give us the details of those, you could just send that to my office and we'll circulate that through the councillors. But thank you both very much for coming and for blessing our gathering. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, I have no apologies. Nice to see Councillor Wolf there online. So I don't need to move those. Announcements. Now, I do have a couple of announcements that I wanted to make. The first one of them is a congratulations, and the second one of them is a condolences. I suspect you all know what the second one is, or who that's about. But look, I wanted to, and I think reflecting the comments that Mustenza and Manjit have made, to reflect on how lucky we are to be in this country and be able to do the things that we do. In most countries of the world, we wouldn't even be able to have a meeting like this at the moment, let alone some of the gatherings which we've been able to enjoy as a community. And I particularly wanted at this time to recognise our arts and culture sector because they have had to be flexible, durable, and they've offered each other mutual support, which I think has been fantastic to see that the mutual support among the arts and culture sector. The last 14 months have been particularly hard on people around the country, but it pales into insignificance, I would suggest, in comparison to some other nations, what some other nations are going through. But for those parts of our community where they rely on gathering together, it's been particularly tough, and that is no more than anywhere else in the arts and culture sector. In the last few days, we've had the pleasure of attending a number of events, including the community-based Kauri Theatre Company's hilarious production of Shortland Street at the Griffin Theatre, and the Wellington Opera Company's season of Don Giovanni. And it was that I particularly wanted to highlight, because that is a brand new organisation, set up, established through the COVID lockdown period and beyond. The intent had been to perform Don Giovanni last August. And I particularly wanted to pay tribute to Artistic Director Matthew Ross and Trust Chair Kerry Prendergast, but all of their team for the work that they've done in putting that together. While there are multiple funders of the Wellington Opera, it is one of the many arts, culture and events organisations and activities that would not happen without the support of this council. That is what we do. We do this to support our arts and culture sector, and we also do it to support our city and to draw people into the city and to provide activity there. To the best of our knowledge, the Wellington Opera is the only new opera company in the world over the last 15 or 16 months. So I just thought it was important that we actually recognise the fantastic job that they have done in trying circumstances to put together a company and also to put together what has been a fantastic season of a much-loved opera. The second thing I wanted to mention is to recognise the passing of Dave Cull. I'm a very strong believer in the local government family, and today I wanted to recognise that our family has lost a special and significant member. Dave, of course, passed away sadly earlier this week. He was elected to the Dunedin City Council in 2007. He served as mayor from 2010 to 2019, which was a period that they had to absorb the costs of the Dunedin Stadium and the global financial crisis, which had to be dealt with as well. He also became head, of course, of our local government family as president of Local Government New Zealand in 2017, and he stood down just a few months ago in August of 2020. And in that role, he particularly championed a coherent response to climate change. Before becoming, before becoming mayor, Dave was a TV presenter, mostly on home improvement, but he was also author of several books, and I thought that was interesting to reflect on some of those books, and a contributor to many magazines. The books included Icebergs, The Antarctic Comes to Town, focus on that climate change bit, and Big Weather, South Dunedin. Again, climate was an issue which he was obviously very focused on. Personally, I always enjoyed working with Dave. He was, friendly, pragmatic, thoughtful, visionary, and just a thoroughly decent bloke. We build on the shoulders of those who have gone before, and there is much that we will build on Dave's shoulders. I want to express my condolences to Dave's wife, Joan, and to his family and friends. And I'd like, if you can, if you're willing to join with me, to stand just for a few moments of silence in recognition of Dave's huge contribution to local government. Thank you all. Right, conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? I see none, but I will repeat what I said at the strategy and policy meeting last week. Because I had a conflict at the time, I did not participate in the hearings in relation to the gaming paper, and so I will vacate the chair at that point in time, Sarah, and you will need to take over. So if we can record that, please. Confirmation of the minutes. I move that the Council approves the minutes of the Council meeting held 31st of March, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I'll put that, please. Simon, can you see Simon? Simon's got to look for Simon. Got Simon there? All good? Right, good, thank you. It's passed. Right. Okay, items not on the agenda. There are no items not on the agenda. Now, public participation, we're going to do this slightly differently today. We have 4 public participants to start us off with. Then we'll deal with the paper on our governance. Then iwi representatives will come in to the table, speak any Q&A with them, and then we'll do the iwi representation paper. So it's separate to the public participation. Okay, so we're starting off with BGI and Te Ahi o Ngā Rangatira, Eddie Davis-Ray and Ross Davis. Welcome. And we've got you down for 10 minutes. And you're speaking to the item on iwi representation, I understand.
Thank you. Ngā mihi ki te atua, ngā mihi ki a Papatuanuku, ngā mihi ki te tangata whenua, ki te mana whenua, taranaki whānui, ki te upako o te ika, me Ngāti Toa hoki. Ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa, ko Elsa tōku ingoa, he kaimahi o te whare taiohi o Pōneke. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora everybody, my name is Elsa Kreft and I am the coordinator of a mentoring program called Challenge for Change for at-risk rangatahi here in Wellington. It's been running for something close to the last 18 years with the wonderful organisation that I am proud to work with called BGI, or Te Whare Taiohi o Pōneke. And we're here today largely to tautoko all of the whakaro and kōrero from the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting we feel that the points that were made there in support of having mana whenua on committee and with voting rights and remuneration were very eloquently made, thoughtfully considered and convincing. So we don't feel as if we need to repeat any of what was said, but we would like to add something on behalf of the rangatahi who we work with so closely. 3 points specifically: the importance of representation, the fact that in our research, young people's voices themselves are saying they want Māori representation and Māori in decision making at a council level, and also that we want to tautoko what Generation Zero said last time about the fact that there is need for more support for this role, and that actually this move, this decision, in many ways reflects public opinion and the current reality that we see where Te Ao Māori is being recognised and valued. So I'm specifically going to be speaking to the importance of representation. We know that for rangatahi Māori, representation is vitally important. It sets a precedent here, what you're doing, and means that it is aspirational and inspirational for these young Māori, that if they want to add their voices to decision-making spaces, they see that as an option, and also one that is demonstrably valued. It's important for them to see voices that they identify with being heard, and that is something that helps to bolster identity for them and diminishes prejudice. If we were to draw a parallel with media, we know that when there is not adequate representation for minority groups, it can lead to something called symbolic annihilation, which helps to keep social inequality in place. So representation and what this move would mean for young people is huge and powerful. Thank you. Our second point, in effect, all the points that we're raising can sort of be summed up by Hui Puketapu's amazing quote last time, the future is watching. Young people have made their feelings about this issue very clear. By including Māori at the decision-making table, you're honouring the wishes and perspectives of young people, many of whom cannot yet vote for you, but are often underrepresented as a result. You may be getting used to me coming here and sharing snippets from our wellbeing research report released last year. When young people were asked what they would do if they were the Mayor of Wellington to improve young people's wellbeing, one of the key findings was making sure that Māori were at the decision-making table. This came through consistently in our research and showed the appetite that young people have for diversity and inclusion, especially at a council level. Much of this feedback came from Pākehā and Tauiwi young people as well as Māori themselves. This research was about well-being of young people, which means we weren't specifically asking whether young people thought Māori should be involved, and yet still this was needed to be made clear by the young people that this is a well-being issue as well as all the other factors that come into this. They say you can't tell what will happen in the future, but young people have given us a glimpse into the future that they would like to see, and they are watching.
Tēnā tātou katoa. We came last time and listened to the really intelligent onto it people that presented. So I thought it may help to have the views from a conservative accountant over 60s like me. You know, the male, pale, hopefully not stale. An old guy who swims each morning at 7 a.m. in Oriental Bay with no wetsuit wanted to learn Māori with my retired neighbour. So they asked if one of our BGI apprentice youth workers, both mana and ihaka, if they could help. So in our first three-person lesson, the swimmer explained that these Māori would paddle past him on their waka at 7 a.m. and he wanted to know how to say hello in Māori. So my elderly, white, rich neighbours wanted to be able to participate in the Māori world. The young apprentices were happy to teach them for free, but these neighbours saw them as experts who had spent much of their lives learning te reo. So it was agreed the rate for an expert would be $75 to $90 an hour. I suppose these people are typical of the many fair-minded Kiwis and Kelvinites who want to do the right thing. It's no longer politically risky to be supportive of paying Māori a fair rate for their expertise. The world's changed from when I was brought up, and there's a new normal. I'd also like to just tautoko, as Elsa mentioned, the Gen Zero group, who mentioned the support that would be needed for Māori on committees to help them to listen and communicate well to their people. I'd also like to add that more support will be needed for councillors to enable the committees to run cost efficiently. The last thing we accountant ratepayers, $9,000 my rates, want is people getting paid to waste time talking past each other. I've heard from Māori on similar committees that we Pākehā tend to think the Māori reps are just another lobby group, sort of like Forest and Bird. They think they are treaty partners in tangata whenua, and we don't quite know what that is, and it can be insulting to ask people to explain who they are in their own country and why they are sort of different from a lobby group like Forest and Bird. So the talking past each other is expensive, time-wasting territory, which a bit of training can fix. Māori have often told me they also feel like a punching bag from all sides, and at other times like Casper the Ghost, ignored on most issues. Often they feel misunderstood and miscommunicated to, as if they were Forest and Bird. So both parties need more support, resources and understanding to communicate well. I find it sometimes hard to explain the change of perspective I've experienced, but it is sort of like the scales fell from my eyes. So I'm happy to discuss over a beer with any of the learning counsellors about what it's like to be a white male slow learner trying to be a good treaty partner personally and professionally. Kia ora.
Minute and a half. Are there any questions? Councillor Rush.
Elsa, was going to be for you, but I think it can be for any of you. So you've talked a lot about representation. So where do the Maori ward sort of structure fit into what your aspirations are for? And I guess with the improvements that have been recently made, is that a more reachable outcome to be able to get representation on council?
I would have sort of thought it was a both and. Is any?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think this is a minimum sort of first step, as a lot of people said last time. The Māori wards are about the elected officials and allowing Māori to. I suppose it's. The thing is that both of these are important small steps need to make the sort of representation issue sort of realised, I suppose.
Okay. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor.
There's hardly enough time for this, but I was changed, and that was for you, Ross. If you can.
To tell you the truth, in summary, it's that feeling of superiority I was brought up with, imbued with. I was born in Remuera, Auckland, live in Kelburn. It's hard to see the world through other people's eyes.
Thank you all very much. Very much appreciated.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Emily Lyall. Emily, welcome. Speaking to the same item. Yep. Now we've got you down for 5 minutes. Yep. So again, if you want to leave any question, sorry,
It was 10 minutes for a moment there. I don't
It
deserve
was 10, yeah, sorry. No, our standing orders are such that individuals is 5 and organisations is 10, so
That's what I
yeah.
expect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki te mana whenua o te rohe nei. My name's Emily Beausoleil. I'm a senior lecturer in politics at Te Herenga Waka up the hill, and I specialize in how to enhance voice and listening in unequal and diverse communities. So it's in that context, and via 2 arguments, I would love to lend my support. This is such a wonderful step in the right direction from both those perspectives, from a democratic perspective and a TDT perspective. So elections are but one mechanism, one among many mechanisms that we have to realize something that's much more fundamental in democracies, and that's the all-affected principle. And the all-affected principle is that if we are affected by a decision, it's legitimate insofar as our positions are considered. And that's the definition of democracy, the democratic norm, that we should be able to seriously influence decision-making that affects our lives. That's not just a norm, but it turns out to be a practical strength. So studies show that our decisions are more informed and ultimately more appropriate and ultimately more effective the more perspectives we bring to bear on them. Because we're so affected so differently about the same issues, we bring different values to bear, different perspectives and visions to bear, that it enhances the quality of our decision making. So elections are just one tool to realize this democratic norm. But taken alone, they can prove undemocratic. And that's because taken alone, they work by majority rule. And that means that by definition, they overwhelm minority and marginalized views that are precious in terms of that norm and in terms of the effectiveness of the decisions we reach. So this is why minority rights and protections are as essential to thriving democracies as those mechanisms like voting in elections. And that's because they ensure minority voices are not drowned out by the majority rule, and that our decision-making is therefore stronger, more effective, and more just as a result. So securing seats and roles in real meaningful contribution to decision-making, not just consultation, but active participation in decision-making by mana whenua, who are not just vital perspectives, values, visions, context to bear on those decisions, but also drowned out by that majority mechanism of elections. They are not secured alone by that mechanism. Means that these kinds of steps that are proposed here are vital to enhancing democracy and the quality of our decisions here. But apart from that democratic argument, I want to offer another, and that's our collective commitments of Te Tiriti. So this council and every other council across the country, they sit within a Māori context. And by that, I mean that the authorities of this body, the activities of this body are taking place where sovereignty was never ceded, sovereignty of mana whenua. The terms are people committed to coexist here, written into TDT, expressly outline kawanatanga, or the capacity of non-Māori to govern their own affairs, sits alongside and within tino rangatiratanga, which is total political authority of Māori in this place, of mana whenua in this place. So people like me have failed to uphold these commitments, and by various means, but importantly, especially majority rule, by making ourselves, the sheer logic of numbers, making ourselves into a majority here. We have presumed and continue to presume to claim authorities that were never and continue to not be ours to take. So we can, in these kinds of decisions, lose sight of the fact that this is always first and foremost a Māori context, where mana whenua should have ultimate political authority. They should set the context in terms for decision-making, but also we lose sight of the historical taking, the illegitimate historical taking that has stacked power and resource so differently that it's very different terms with which we decide. It's very different bodies that get to decide these kinds of questions than mana whenua. So what I would say here is, in terms of ultimately this also means that we misinterpret TDT issues as inclusion issues. We forget what context we're in, what authority in which we sit. And so both, this isn't really an inclusion issue as so much as a TDT issue. And as Moana Jackson says, treaty partners don't consult, they negotiate. And empowering Mana Whenua with voting rights, remunerating them for the crucial expertise, time, and labor that they offer in that crucial role is a small but important step
Emily,
to
can I get you
realizing
to
our
wind up,
commitments.
please? The time is
I'm done.
close. Oh, you're done. Oh, well, that's perfect timing then. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, kia ora.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Dr. Lorena Gibson, welcome. Lorena, again, you've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yep.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi ki te mana whenua. My name's Lorena Gibson. I'm a senior lecturer in cultural anthropology at Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. My research focuses on community development and how people work together across difference in pursuit of social justice. So I was very happy to see this paper and the support it has received from the public and from many of you. The Council recognises that there is value in having Mana Whenua representatives on its committees. We know this because you already have positions on various subcommittees for representatives from Taranaki Whānui ki te upuko o te ika and Ngāti Toa Rangatira. It's valuable to have Mana Whenua representation for a number of reasons. It shows that the Council is serious about upholding its obligations to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. It acknowledges that Mana Whenua are experts at being Mana Whenua and that their expertise is vital to good decision making. It ensures that Council committees have an essential voice that would otherwise be missing from its conversations. It shows that the Council wants meaningful relationships with Mana Whenua, that it wants to listen and to learn from people whose connections with this land go back for generations. Since the Council recognises that it is valuable to have Mana Whenua representation on its committees, it makes sense to remunerate them. It makes sense to remunerate them for the expertise that they bring, for the work that they do in deciding which of their members is the right person to be on the various committees. And the cultural labour, the emotional labour, and the educational labour that Mana Whenua perform in these roles. It also makes sense that Mana Whenua representatives have full voting rights. This sends a clear message to Mana Whenua that the Council is serious about engaging with them on the future of this city. I just want to tell you a little bit about a course I teach. I'm teaching in the second half of this year. The course is about how different groups of people work together to achieve liberation from all forms of oppression. As part of that course, we read a couple of books, including the bestseller Adjoining, which puts forward a vision of Aotearoa based on social justice and honouring Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Two of the authors of that book, Bianca Elkington and Jenny Smeaton, are of Ngāti Toa Rangatira. I share this to make the point that Mana Whenua are world leaders in this space. Paying Mana Whenua representatives for their contributions and ensuring that they have voting rights puts the Council in a strong position to become leaders as well. We also read Ranginui Walker's book, Ka Whawhai Tonu Mātou, Struggle Without End, which details many of the ways that Māori were systematically dispossessed of their land and subject to various forms of colonial violence. Students come away from that quite depressed about the ongoing legacies of colonisation in Aotearoa, which, as one of the authors of Imagining Decolonisation points out, have been bad for everyone, not just Māori. And they often ask me what they can do to work towards decolonisation and a country that honours Te Tiriti. Wouldn't it be great if I could tell them about some of the things that Wellington City Council is doing to develop meaningful, mana-enhancing and transformative relationships with Mana Whenua? From my research, I know that it's easy for people in positions of power to uphold the status quo. It can be difficult and it can be uncomfortable to take action that moves towards social justice. Supporting this paper is one step that you can take that will show everyone that you are up to the challenge. And I hope I've left time for a question.
You do, you have. Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. So thanks for the, you mentioned social justice. I've got a number of questions, but you mentioned social justice, and one of my concerns as a former criminal barrister is that we've got a massive disproportionately representation of Māori in prison population and at the bottom of most of the statistics that we have in New Zealand. Can you talk through how a small step like we are talking about today will trace through into better outcomes for Māori in those statistics?
What's the connection again?
Māori are poorly represented in some of the poor statistics in New Zealand, including prison populations.
Okay.
How does a small step like today start moving towards fixing those issues?
So how does giving Māori representation and voting rights at council help alleviate disenfranchisement?
I just stop. I'm not sure if the prison population is disproportionately Māori because of disenfranchisement. But if that's your answer, then by all means articulate that.
I think I'm out of time, but I could direct you to Moana Jackson's work in this area. He's done quite a bit on that.
Lorena, thank you very much. And now we have, I've got it down as Laura Jackson, but I think you've got a team there, so come on up, the Youth Council. And you're speaking to the advisory group terms of reference. Yes.
Kia ora.
Got 10 minutes, as you know the drill.
Kia ora, ko Ella toko ingoa.
Ko Brad toko ingoa.
Hi, we're from Youth Council, as you may know, and we're here to talk to the advisory group's terms of reference that have been drafted by the wonderful Sean. So I'd just like to thank Sean for all the work he's done.
Right, Heidi.
We'd like to thank Sean for all the work he's done on combining the terms of reference and making sure that they are the best that they can be. We're really happy with them overall from a Youth Council perspective. We like the fact that they're combined, but they're also keeping the unique aspects of advisory groups in mind. One small thing that we're going to comment on is in our current terms of reference, there's something about developing youth councillors through offering them opportunities at council, also secondments, and this is also on the current terms of reference. And this is something we haven't seen yet in Youth Council throughout the years. So yeah, that would be awesome if we could see that in the future.
I guess just to expand on that, as I hope councillors will agree, the point around developing the capabilities of youth council members has been going well in recent years. Our current crop of youth councillors across previous generations have been of incredibly high calibre, and I'd like to think that council regards our insights as top-notch. Certainly I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but noting that as well, that there is, and we've been talking about sort of the capability of Wellingtonians in recent weeks, just a really strong push there for, I guess, council according to what it's signing up to there, which is to try and develop its members. Youth councillors give a lot of time, as do all the other advisory group participants, but early on in your career, trying to get a bit of a break can be useful. More importantly, youth councillors, whether or not we like it, have a deep, intimate understanding of the various acronyms of local government and similar, and so could well bring quite a unique viewpoint to things. And so I would just endorse what Ella's been saying around giving young people around the Youth Council table a bit more of a shot. You've trusted us to provide some advice. We'd ask you that you trust us to do a little bit more. But on the whole, very, very happy with the terms of reference, keeping things as they are, strengthening things where they can be, and ensuring that young people continue to have a voice around the decision-making table by talking to you as elected members. We keep it short, sharp and sweet here.
You did. Very impressive. Are there any questions? Councillor Paul.
Kia ora kōrua. I was just thinking, just given the presentations before you guys, do you have any plans to bring on board more Māori members and particularly mana whenua rangatahi to Youth Council?
That is absolutely in our plan. I think it's a massive priority, and within the terms of reference there's also a specific little part saying that we really need to encourage that we are onboarding as many diverse voices as possible, especially those who aren't usually heard, because I think we have to keep in mind that within young people, the people more likely to come up and say are people with privilege. So I think it's really important that we're empowering as many voices as possible, especially tangata whenua.
Just to add to that, Councillor Paul, we're also in the early stages of trying to understand how we can change how Youth Council operates to allow for a bit more of an inviting and less intimidating environment to try and, I think, as one of our members termed it, literally decolonise Youth Council at the same time. Worthwhile highlighting that it is difficult. We have found it difficult in previous years to ensure we do have a diverse range. It's certainly not without trying, and so any assistance that other groups, including councillors or others, that can be provided, would be very welcome and open to receiving that.
Councillor Pannett, sorry.
Kia ora, thanks very much for coming in. I'm just wondering, the review made a number of process changes. What I guess I'm more interested in is there anything the council could be doing to make sure you are empowered to do the work to make sure we can see actual benefits for young people on the street? So is there anything we could be doing better to make that happen?
Some things that spring to mind are obviously participation times, making sure they're accessible to young people, so outside of school times especially for ones that are quite important to young people. Apart from that, when we're thinking about engagement with young people, ensuring that council is going out and not seeing us as a group of representative of all of young people in Wellington, because we're not going to be able to represent the 80,000 young people in Wellington. So it's really important that council is going out and doing that work themselves and not just using us as a be-all, end-all to what young people think. And apart from that, if we are going to engage with young people, providing us with resources and support to do that in a proper way.
I guess probably also to just highlight there that we are an advisory group, we're not an engagement group, and if council wants us to be an engagement group, I'm sure we'll look at it, but given that we've previously had to have conversations with council staff about what resource we can bring, and our resource is basically just our time, there's a limitation there. And I guess I only say that because as an advisory group, we provide advice to council based on the things that council wants to hear about. We're not a proactive lobby group. We're not necessarily going to come to council with our views on X, Y, Z needs to happen outside of a normal consultation period. And I think that's always been a bit of a distinction with other groups. If council wants to see something else wider than that, we probably need some slightly more specific direction on that, I'd imagine.
That's another question.
Yeah, go.
Would you be happy to do that if we provided the resources?
I think it would be down to the capacity of our members, but in the past we have really loved doing some things, like we went out on a crocodile bike, engaged with young people around the city, and that's been one of the highlights, I'm pretty sure, for most members. When I was being recruited, they talked about that as a highlight. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're certainly able to do it. Yeah, with the right capability behind us and the right support, we can bring the energy.
Yeah.
Any other questions, councillors? Otherwise, Ella and Brad, thank you very much, as always, for coming along and joining us and for all the work you do.
Thank you. Yes.
So, councillors, that takes us to the beginning of the agenda. So I'm going to introduce the report on the governance review. So we have had a fairly lengthy discussion about this, and we've obviously had several briefings, but I did think it was worth just making a few comments, and then hopefully we can move on from that. So first of all, when I launched the governance review, I reflected on the need for us to change in this room and around this table, and I said at that stage that the confidence of our community in our ability to govern optimally had been eroded. And I think that is especially critical at this time because obviously we face unprecedented challenges as a city. You all know what those are. In fact, Peter's report spells them out very, very clearly. And I said we needed governance change and our city needs governance change, and you all stood to recognise the truth of that and that we did need to do a review. Now, I think it'd be fair to say that when we started, there was some nerves about the process and about where we might end up. There were particularly some nerves around having Peter Winder as the person doing the review, probably particularly because of the outcome of the Tauranga review and what happened with that. But I think that what I detected from the conversations was that people felt actually quite comfortable with Peter and James, and I think what was apparent early on is that message that we are not Tauranga, that we have challenges but we're not Tauranga. And so I think that gave people a lot more comfort than maybe when we started out. we asked Peter to do the job because you look at his CV, which is what he said to us, when we gathered, when he introduced himself to us, it was pretty impressive. And I think, to be fair, he's uniquely qualified in this particular role. And I would like to think that you all warmed to Peter and James as the work went on. I think when they reported back to us, there was some relief. In fact, I heard it verbalised. There was some relief that perhaps we might have been expected to be beaten up a little bit more in that, but that there was some relief that it wasn't tougher on us collectively. I think they've done a good job, and most importantly, they have given us the chance to reset, and it's a chance we should grab with both hands. We're halfway through the term of this council. This month represents halfway through the term of this council, so it's up to us to make the most for our city of the other half of this term and to focus on what really matters. I want to pick up on just a few of their key points. The first one of them was that they found there was no evidence that got across their line of bullying. They did reflect on some concerns that some staff had about the ability to feel safe giving us free and frank advice. And so I think there were some issues there that were of concern, but that didn't get across the line in their view of being bullying. They reflected that there was some leaking going on, but in their view, my view slightly surprising, but in their view, it wasn't at a level which was out of the ordinary for local government. Local government obviously evidently is quite good at doing this, so but don't treat that as being a good thing. And they didn't say it was a good thing. What they did say, it wasn't out of the ordinary. However, they did reflect that we are a long way from being okay. The report talks about us and them culture between elected members and management and staff, and that is something clearly that is not seen as being a good thing. And the public perception spelled out, and if you look at 98, and that is by those, 98 in the report, that is by those who were interviewed. Now, you think about the people who were interviewed. It was us, it was our management team, it was our CCOs, it was some of our key stakeholders. It's not a pretty picture, and it does say to us we've got to do a whole lot better than that. The only good one out of that list was well-intentioned and passionate. The rest of them are all bang, bang. They were really a bit of a slap around the collective chops. There is a section which says there is no evidence of bullying, but it can be grim. So again, there's an issue there. And it talks about behaviour undermining public trust and confidence. So what is clear is we didn't get across the Tauranga bar, that it wasn't as bad as some people were thinking, but there are some things we need to fix. So the report is our opportunity to reset, and it's up to us to take it in both hands. On the positive side, one of the things that is there very, very strongly is they recognise that we are making big decisions. We're making big decisions on behalf of our city, and particularly they focused on the LTP. That is a big decision. If we'd not got that across the line in a credible way, I think there would have been concerns, but we did, and we're going through the engagement process with our community and waiting for what the community says to us. So far, and I haven't seen anything for the last few days, but so far what I'm hearing from our community is actually they think, broadly speaking, we're on track. So we'll see what happens by the time we get to the end of the process, but obviously there's a long way to go with that, but initial feedback is encouraging. So what did they recommend? Well, they recommended structural changes. Now, I'm not going to, I know we traversed a little bit about how we did the appointment process. I'm not going to put the other side of the coin, unless anybody else raises it, then I will. But I'm not going to put the other side of the coin in this discussion. They recommended that we be a bit clearer about our vision and the bucket list, the things that we need to achieve over the next 18 months. And I think if you look at the challenges that Peter and James spell out in our report, in their report, they're pretty clear. They're pretty clear. And they're the things which are front and centre in our LTP. They're also at the moment mostly front and centre in Barbara's KPIs. And so we are focused on those things. Maybe we just need to enunciate that more clearly, and that's something which we clearly will do. They talked about some areas where we need a behavioural change. They said that we need to be more externally facing, particularly myself and the Deputy Mayor, and so to be freed up to do that, and I certainly welcome that and embrace that. And they also said we need to do more focusing on monitoring. And that is not that we just say, hey, we made a decision, let's set and forget. I know Councillor Fitzsimons, you in particular, have said, hey, where is our list of the resolutions that we've got and how have those resolutions been addressed? That's one of the simple things. But generally speaking, we've got a massive capital program that we're embarking on that it is not good enough to just go, hey, set it and forget it. Now, Finance, Audit and Risk at the moment does look at those projects and look at the risk around those key projects, but clearly that needs to be much more front and centre. And I think the place that I learnt that most clearly was the redevelopment of the Kilburnie Town Centre a few years ago. We'd had the big argument, did the consultation, said, yeah, let's do it, but the delivery turned into a bit of a mess. And that had a significant impact, relatively small project, but a significant impact financially, but also a significant impact on the community where the changes were supposed to benefit them, and they didn't really feel like they were being benefited. So set and forget is not the right outcome, and that is what is being suggested there. So I'm going to finish with that just to say, as a city, we've got some massive challenges and opportunities. Peter's and James's report has given us the opportunity for a reset and to make sure that we address those, and we do that together as a team, but also together with our management team and our staff. We have a fantastic management team with fantastic staff who do an incredible job on behalf of the city, and I look forward to us being really strongly supportive of working with them to deliver what our city needs. So I'm delighted to move the report. Just to finish off with, the other thing to say is this report is simply essentially receiving the governance review, and obviously officers are doing work on how to put that into place, which will be being done over the next few days, and then the intention is that the delegations, etc., will all go to the council meeting on the 13th of May. So happy to move. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to second? Do you wish to speak?
Yes. Look, I don't think we need to speak too long on this one, but just to say that I think it's positive. I think it's actually, as I said before, a really brave move to say, look, perhaps we're not working as well as we could. Perhaps this isn't actually doing justice to the resources that we're putting into it and the staff are putting into it. We were making progress, but it was it was difficult and fraught at times, and I felt that we could do better. I think that the review has actually shown that that's probably the case. We can do better, and I'm looking forward to us putting into place the vast majority of the recommendations, because I actually think it's going to make our work more streamlined, it's going to make our work more effective, and we really need to be doing that because the city is at a very crucial time. We have a very ambitious budget. We want to be delivering on that, and we want to know that we're delivering it, to have the accountability, the monitoring, and the streamlined approach that I think the new committee structure will deliver. So, and I'm looking forward actually to going into my community and people not saying they feel sorry for me when they realise I'm the deputy mayor. I really find that hard to deal with when I go just shopping or to church or meet people and they say to me, oh, it's lovely to meet you, but I feel so sorry for you. And actually, they don't need to feel sorry for me because we are going to be part of a team that's really well performing from this point on. And I think it will be transformational. I'm really looking forward to us just cracking on and doing it. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
Kia ora koutou. Very briefly, the Accessibility Advisory Group met last night and they asked me to just report briefly on their conversation. They were concerned that the focus on inclusion, participation and the rights of disabled people could be somewhat lost by not having an accessibility portfolio role. And they note that accessibility does sit across all of these committees, not in any one of them, and that is kind of a challenge that is presented to us by the new structure. They have signalled that they will be bringing to this council a request that we sign up to the Accessibility Charter as a way to sort of mitigate the risk associated with this change. So I look forward to your support when that comes to this council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Matthews. Is there anyone else? Councillor Young.
So I thought the report was really excellent, but I'd have to say that I'm really disappointed that the Mayor is taking a pick and mix approach to the recommendations, because made some very clear recommendations about the way committees should be structured. And I think it's disappointing that I think we should accept the report in full and implement it as such. And this would, I think also, I do hope that the Mayor takes on board the message about the reset. I think it's really important because we need you to be leading the city, and I am concerned about your external appointments such as the airport. So I'd just like to put that on the record. I think the report is great, but I think we should accept all the recommendations and implement them.
Thanks. Anyone else? No? Okay. Thank you all for a brief conversation there. Deputy Mayor, yes, looking forward to people saying, the number of people who say to me, God knows how you're doing what you're doing, it's every day. And it's often many people a day. So I would love to be in a position which they don't feel that, because they're feeling that we are actually working together as well as we can. Councillor Matthews, the Accessibility Advisory Group. Look, we've still got the advisory groups. You're still the person on the advisory group. I know we're about to set up a Rainbow Advisory Group, and that we will have, a portfolio representative for the Rainbow Advisory Group. Councillor O'Neill is, has, I think, enthusiastically accepting that. And so absolutely that voice still stays there. But I will look forward to the Accessibility Charter coming to us, and to seeing what it means, but I'm sure that that will be something which we will embrace. Councillor Young, I suspect what you're referring to is the process of appointments. Now, of course, I didn't start. I did say I wouldn't respond to that particular thing, but now I have to, because the narrative that is in the public arena is that it was done in a particular way. And when we started that process, we were all in the room down, or many of us were in the room downstairs, and Peter was available to have a session which would have been actually yesterday, Tuesday. And people said, no, we need to do that quickly. And so you collectively started on that process. That left us in a position of actually having to move that faster than I would have done otherwise. Otherwise, we'd have done it with Peter in the room, and we'd have worked our way through that. That's not what we did. But I think we've got to a place where most people, I tried to talk to everybody. Look, I know it didn't go as well as for some people as they'd have liked, but I did try and put people in the places which I thought worked best. But I acknowledge that it's never going to work for everybody all the time. So my apologies for that, but there are two sides to that conversation. That's all I'm going to say this stage. The other bit was, you said, taking on the external bit, Councillor Young, and you're absolutely right. Engagement with our commercial sector is an important part of that. And I see the airport as being an important part of that external sector as well. Right, we will vote. Well, councillors, that is perfectly timed for morning tea. So I think what we'll do is take the morning tea break and come back in 15 minutes. Does that work? Yeah, okay, we'll come back in 15 minutes. And iwi representatives will be with us then. Yeah. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to our kōrero, and we'll look forward to what you've got to say. Councillor Wolf is not here with us. Heidi's just said to me he's having connectivity problems. He's on the west coast somewhere, so he's moving to higher ground. So anyway, look, welcome. We look for welcome, and we look forward to what you've got to say to us. I don't know who's going to start off. Yep.
Tēnā tātou te kaungira, tātou tātou nei tāne, tūpoko tika. E mihi nei kia koutou, hei whakawātia mai ana kia mātou, ta mana te whiro, ka taia kei mutara ria koutou te atane. Urira, ami. It's good to be here and to be able to submit verbally the thinking that we're about in terms of the recommendation around the mana whena representation on council committees. Howman will talk further on that position and on that recommendation, but we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present our views and our points on the recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, kia ora, te mana, kia ora, whānau, te kaunihere o Poneke. It's good to be here with you all. Helmut Modlick's my name, and I'm currently serving as the Chief Executive of Te Runanga o Ngāti Toa Rangatira. And it's a little bit of a daunting setting here. It's the first time I've been in this situation, but it is an historic moment in one sense. I've been reflecting on it, and we were just talking about the specifics of the thinking that's before you. Just if you indulge me for a moment on a couple of reflections, I was just sharing with my cousin Taku, our chair, because we just had Anzac, and inevitably each year we get posted online some reminders of the sacrifice made in the past. And in 1946, the Māori Battalion returned to New Zealand locally, and the men were taken out to Takapuahia, where Ngāti Toa has been based for the better part of the last 200 years, for the more part. And in this old newsreel that was posted on Facebook that I was just watching this morning, brought a tear to my eye to see the faces of my koros there, with his ripped up jacket, age 42, 1946, sticking the meat through the thing, putting it on the hangi. My mother's there, she's 13 years old, and then all of our old people and relations that were there. And I was reflecting on the fact that those lives that were in front of me there were only about 100 years from the point of the Crown turning up here, and with our rangatira entering into a covenant between two independent peoples. And it's fair for me to observe that at that time, numerically, economically, militarily, it was very clear where the power lay, and it wasn't with the white fellas that were signing on behalf of the Crown. And so it was a covenant between two independent groups of people, and I was just reflecting on the fact that democracy was nowhere to be found on any of that documentation, that was a subsequent concept that's been developed to our detriment, but there it is. It beats the hell out of what comes second to democracy, frankly, but nevertheless, the point's made. And so that covenant between those who were representing the rangatiratanga, in our case of Ngāti Toa Rangatira, and here in Port Nicholson, our relations from Taranaki, who signed up to that. No doubt it was an auspicious day as well, where there was a lot of feeling and aspirations for what the commitments would bring. Well, the rest is history, isn't it? You know, before that century was out and my grandfather was born, Ngāti Toa was down to less than 100 adult members for a range of reasons. Our rangatira having been kidnapped by good Governor Gray and kept on a schooner for a year and a half, and then ransomed so that we would relinquish hundreds of thousands of hectares to enable the influx of settlers to arrive and bring to bear their aspirations. Yeah, it's not a good story. I'm feeling very grateful that I'm living now, and that we're at a point in history where there's a degree of honesty about that past, where the cringe of that colonial period, and you know, don't get me wrong, it's not a tragic story in every respect, but it is a tragic story for my people in a lot of respects. But that's the past, and a line's been drawn, and I'm grateful to live today to be a witness to what I expect, to be blunt, whatever you do today, to be a witness to an increasingly emergent determination by New Zealanders to do better for our children in our mokopuna than was done in the past. And I'd like to place the matters before you today, which we're speaking to in that context, that the idea that in the 21st century, your arm of the Kāwanatanga partnership is considering, and I fully expect deciding correctly, to renew that partnership covenant to enable a mana-enhancing relationship between both those who hold the mana on behalf of the iwi in this part of the motu, to stand as equal partners with you as leaders, to consider the weighty matters that no doubt come before you all, and to contribute to identify options, to evaluate resolutions, and then to implement things that will improve the lives of our community. That's good. And as partnerships should be, I don't know if anyone's been a party to a partnership where, you know, there's an alpha and a beta. Those are pretty unedifying partnerships that don't really earn the title, to be frank. That your thinking has been clear enough to go to equitable resourcing so that people can make themselves available with adequate seniority of capability and experience to engage with you as equals in the weighty deliberations that will come before you. That's all good thinking, team. Good thinking. Good thinking. And so, look, on behalf of Ngāti Toa, and indirectly for the rest of my relations, because one of the truths of the people of this area, the mana whenua of this area, is we're all related. But certainly on behalf of Ngāti Toa, can I say that we welcome the opportunity to renew in the 21st century the relationship between Kāwanatanga and Rangatiratanga here, around this table, metaphorically, and to do so as equals, to do so with that same vision of kotahitanga for the people of this land. So I don't know what everybody else is doing around the country, and in some respects I don't give stuff because I live here. And Ngāti Toa is determined to make sure that in Aotearoa we are enhancing the well-being, the prosperity and the mana, yes, of Ngāti Toa, but of all of the people that reside on our whenua. That's what Ngāti Toa do. That's what it means to be mana whenua. And if you're paying attention, you'll see that in Porirua in particular, where we reside, but also further through our rohe, including in here, you'll see that we're taking very seriously actions, investment, co-investment, and influence in every way we can to build that, achieve that vision of enhanced well-being, prosperity and mana for us all. And this is a step in that direction, and so to you all, kia kaha. Kia kaha. Do the right thing, and the right things will flow. Kia ora ra. That's all I got.
Kia ora mai tātou, kia ora i te whānau. Ko John Coffey toko ingoa. Ko au te tia mana o Taranaki whānui ki tūpoko te ika, Port Nicholson Block Settlement Trust. Kia ora, my name's John Coffey. I'm the chair for Port Nicholson Block Settlement Trust. This is my first time or first opportunity to speak to the Wellington City Council, and so it's a delight to be here. For Taranaki Whānui, we thank you for giving us this opportunity, not just to speak today, but to be able to speak at and participate in all of the committees and subcommittees that are being made available to us through this recommendation and through your decision, hopefully in favour of that. For Taranaki Whānui, we understand, we know our treaty rights, where that sits. We also know the obligation on the government, the Crown, and local government authorities, the obligations for participation, partnership, and so forth. We know all that, so I'm not going to lecture you about that. But one of the things we probably miss sometimes is that we actually have shared goals. We have the same goals. What you want as a council for the people of Wellington is exactly the same as we're looking for. And that's where all people in Wellington are healthy, well, wise, that our te taiao is cared for, is well, and is protected, and that we're able to practice the customs, the tikanga that we all want to as different people living in this place. And so we have shared goals. We have shared outcomes. And so while we have a right, we believe, to be at the table, and while you have an obligation to have us there, it makes absolute sense that we be there. You will not succeed without us, and we will not succeed without you. It's as simple as that. And so when you vote or make your decision around this recommendation, that's what you need to be focused on. As far as we are concerned from Taranaki Whānui, we know that we need you, and we know that you need us. Kia ora mai tātou. Kia ora.
Ai kia ora. Mihi ki te mata. Affiliated to the waka, very close relationship. All the remarks that has been made, but to and become a joint is for our rangatahi. So we should be all what we do. Opportunity. A lot that we, and of course the future. Privilege of Cull matters about it, and etc.
Kia ora.
Well, tēnā koutou, kia ora. Councillors, is there anything anybody would like to ask of our iwi partners? Kia ora. I think that's very clear. Oh, I was going to say, I thought that was very clear then.
Yeah.
Councillor Rush.
Helmut, you mentioned that there's no mention of democracy in the Treaty of Waitangi. How do you square that with Article the 3rd, which I think in both languages provides for equal rights for all of us here in New Zealand?
Yeah, so I'm not a political scientist, but I think it's a stretch to equate equal rights with democracy. But the point I'm making, which is more the point, which is that I heard as a young man no, I read it. It was in an Evening Post article. Excuse me. It was a parable that someone had thoughtfully included to stimulate debate on the issue I think you're alluding to, Councillor. And the parable goes quickly like this. A family are asked by a visitor if the visitor could stay in their home. And happily, they're welcomed in. Subsequently, the visitor asked if it was okay that they had family coming from overseas, if they could also stay in the home. And sure. And over time, more came. And eventually, the number of visitors in the family home exceeded the number of family members. And one day, the visitors arranged a hui with the owners of the place and said, look, we'd like to change the arrangements here because on the principle of democracy, there's more of us here now than you. And so we'd actually like to now take control of the home, and it's now our home. And it was an interesting parable, and the parallel is obvious. And the point I was simply making is that if the intention of the signers of that covenant was that one day, which was foreseeable, one day the numbers of arrivals from afar would justify the breaking of the terms of that agreement around their dispossession and loss of rights and inability to have and exercise rangatiratanga. If that was the intention, then that was duplicitous in the extreme. I don't believe it was. I believe it was foreseeable, but I'm taking that, and that's my point. That's my point, Councillor.
Councillor Pannett.
Kia ora, and I'd just like to thank you for the humility in which you have come here, because it's your right, so thank you. Look, I asked this question last time, and I'll just ask it again because we've got other people. What do we need to do to change to make it successful for you to be here and to enable you to do your job? We've heard some stuff around, providing resources to, maybe some EA support, practical things like that. But what else would be helpful?
If I could, and others may have something to say because I don't want to be the only voice, but we've actually had quite good conversations already with the Mayor and senior leadership. And Ngāti Toa has been having conversations with a number of representatives from central and local government. And speaking of Ngāti Toa, our expectation of a progressive and mana enhancing way forward is first to revisit and reaffirm the fact that we are operating as partners. And that's not a complex concept, what partnership means in the 21st century. Representatives kāwanatanga, ases rangatiratanga. So that's okay, high level, principle-based, treaty principle-based. And then to agree a process of open and equitable arrangements that bind us together at governance, for want of a better word, executive or management, and operations. So, because that's how partners work together, right? Like all up and down. And then as we engage at those multiple levels, we'll figure it out and we'll do the detail. Now that journey's already started, and I personally see that what you're doing here is right on point for continuing that. And so the dialogue will reveal the further detail. But I'm personally very comfortable that if the intention is correct and there's authenticity around what's going on, that we'll make it work and the detail will play out.
Kia ora. So just to refresh our memories from when we spoke the last time regarding this question, part of what I spoke about was that remembering our futures in terms of our rangatahi, and we have a very young population moving forward, particularly with the young Māori population, and the statistics tell us that exponentially that will grow over the next 20 to 30 years. I'm sure you're aware of this data. And so from that point of view, being at the table to be able to contribute, I gave the cake analogy, and that we need to be part of the conversation around deciding what the ingredients of the cake look like, not waiting at the other end when the cake comes out of the oven and what we thought was going to be a banana cake actually isn't a banana cake. And so in order for those ingredients to be right across the board in terms of what processes, what procedures, standing orders, etc., are put in place to accommodate that growing Māori population within this rohe, needs to have us in that space to be able to have that conversation as partners, as Helmut's quite rightly pointed out. And that becomes a norm. The kaupapa here is the norm. We're setting a precedent and legacy to create a norm, a new norm, because it hasn't been part of the norm up until today. And so from that point of view, we're excited about being part of that opportunity to engage with you alongside us, as is our right. And so this part where we have arrived at now is about continuing to be part and parcel of creating the cake by having us say what the ingredients are, all the way through that whole process. And so what I'd like to add in there is that, you know, when you make a cake, time is part of the ingredients. Because if you pull the cake out too soon, it's not cooked. It's still mushy in the middle, isn't it?
That's nice.
You know, and so time is part of the ingredients. And often we don't do due diligence to time. However, I think in our half of the treaty partnership, we've spent some time on waiting for this day to arrive. And I think it should be seen as a very exciting time for this table to see that we're setting legacy here and precedent to follow, and we need to be courageous about doing so. Other people are watching us, other councils are watching us. Let's make no bones about that. And if the capital city can be setting the precedent of what this should look like across our country, then we should be very proud of that legacy that we're about to sit. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, boy.
Kia ora.
Can I just say one thing, Mr.
sorry,
Mayor?
Helmut.
It's just come to me, so it's my habit to pay attention to things that do that. I've got a sense that there might be a little bit of reticence by some, which is understandable because this is, as been said, is a crossroad moment, which is a change. So I've got a flash name because my dad's German, and he came out in '51 with a bunch of other squares to build state houses in Titahi Bay. There was 120 of them, mostly Austrians and 3 Germans. My dad was one. And so eventually, by the time him and my mum were married and everything, he'd got a job on the wharf because the pay was better. And one day he was talking to his mates on the wharf that he was looking to marry a girl from Porirua, a Māori girl from Porirua. And they said, "Oh no, don't do that. Play rugby with them, drink beer with them, but don't marry them." It's a true story. It's a true story. So this is the rose-tinted days of what a great place New Zealand was. All right? And so the reason I think I'm telling you that story is it doesn't change till we decide to change it. And today, you'll make a decision that will send a signal, as has been said, not only to other councillors, but to the people of this country, this community, your children, your grandchildren, that it's the right thing to change it. So, kia kaha no. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Hi. Kia ora. Just to add to this program is that, as you know, housing is a major issue today. And what is the reason why it's a major issue is because we don't have enough trade training program. There's not enough apprentices. So what has happened is the government have given the immigration permission in 2021 to bring 16,500 Filipinos to come in to do a trade training. Today, as I speak on behalf of Tainui, the beneficiaries of Tainui, they have 75,000 beneficiaries. 55% of that are the rangatahi, the tamarekis, and the mokapunas. 3 generations. So that's just Tainui. So Taranaki, you can imagine how many apprentices they have there. So the issues about it is that the trade training, as I spoke to the Chief Executive, Josh Williams, and he is concerned about a trade training. And he spoke on behalf of the Minister, Mr. Paul Goldsmith, who is the Minister for Trade Training. But now there's been a huge change. So the Industry Training Federation no longer exists. They've closed that down completely, and now it's BCITO that's taken over the portfolio. So the major point is there's so many changes that's happening, and for us to have the opportunity to address our concern, which is very important, and for us to amalgamate together, you know, we could all join hands and enjoy what we're supposed to do. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Mayor. That's
Kia ora. Look, thank you all very much. We really appreciate that, and we will move on to the debate, so feel free to stay there and yeah. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Very much.
Kia ora.
Thank you. Kia ora.
Atua.
Councillor Day, over to you then.
O, tēnā koe. Tuatahi ki te iwi mana whenua, te Aotearoa Taranaki whānui ki te upoko te ika, me Ngāti Toa Rangatira, tēnā koutou, tēnei te mihi mai o hā ki a koutou I tēnei rā. So yeah, I'd like to really acknowledge mana whenua for being here today. It's been a long journey, as you've said, Huia, a long wait, and it's exciting to be here to talk about this. I'm a little bit nervous today. I'm not usually that nervous around the table, but I've realised I'm nervous because this really matters. This is really, really important, and you're right, this is a historical day for the city. So I do also want to acknowledge that this is actually just a small step. I'd like to see it go further, but I know that we're on a journey and it's important that we make a start. I'd like to also acknowledge and mihi to our public submitters from both meetings. We've had highly intellectual and connected members of the public come and tell us unreservedly why this is such an important thing that this council does today. I'd like to acknowledge that there was a letter from Becky Cull and Ngāho Māori designers in support of this, and I'd like to table that letter in today's meeting. It's really compelling and important to note that so many people are telling us that this is the right thing to do now. We have a challenging history in Aotearoa. It's an even more challenging one in Wellington. We were one of the most effectively colonised parts of this country, and we've heard stories about that in recent times through debates. Which is why this is so important. And I just want to share, I've shared a few things along the way in our debates, but this is a book which I think everybody should have a look at. It's called No Māori Allowed. And the scary thing about this is the attempts at segregation and exclusion that have happened in Aotearoa up until very recent times. 1964 is one of the dates I can see there. That is so recent that it's terrible that we don't know about it. It's just that nobody talks about it. And so, Councillor Pannett, your question about what we can do, I think it's a really important question. I think probably one of the main things we need to do is to educate ourselves. And I want to thank you, Huia, for sending that email through to offer us opportunities to educate ourselves and understand te whanganuiatara from te ao Māori perspective and a mana whenua perspective. It will help us in our decision making, and it's already helped me. It is through better education that we understand why these decisions are so important. So to me, this is actually about putting things right. We've already had these seats at a couple of the committees, but they are unfair and unjust. And so this is really about saying no more to having names on paper that aren't acknowledged financially or with voting rights. And so it is actually quite a simple decision because we've already agreed that it should happen. We just need to make sure we follow up with the right things. I just also want to acknowledge that there are many tools in the toolkit. There is Māori Ward, which is also important, this, and also an operational relationship, which has been communicated with us. Just looking at the time. I want to also acknowledge Hui, your kōrero about the future is watching. That is really important and very much in my mind, and also from BGI.
Councillor Day, I'm going to give you another minute.
Thank you. Also acknowledging BGI sharing that same whakaaro with us as they work with many young people who are very clear with them why this is important. I also want to acknowledge Ross Davis for sharing really honest reflections and his point that this is no longer politically risky to make this decision. I think it's right, and it's good that we've had people share their perspectives. I think the comment about resources and support has been raised, and this has been discussed with officers, and the need for adequate support to make sure that mana whenua can fill these seats in a way that is fair and follows good process. Also, this new governance review structure, I just want to acknowledge that these seats will continue into the new committees that are created. That is part of that process. So this has been a long journey for mana whenua. For me, since October feels like a long time when the notice of motion was first filed. So I can only imagine how frustrating it has been for generation after generation to watch this council not really get it quite right. It's been really widely debated, so I think it's just time to acknowledge that we know what the opportunity is that's in front of us. As Helmut said, it doesn't change until we decide to change. So let's change it. Kia ora.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Day. Seconded by Councillor Paul. Do you wish to speak?
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui ki te mana whenua o tēnei rohe. Don't have a lot of time, so I just wanted to, I was thinking about Councillor Rush's question to one of the participants about how does this decision that we're making here today impact that overrepresentation in those statistics that you were talking about. And I think we got to that point, the fact that 50% of our prison population are Māori and all of the other ways that we're overrepresented by not honouring te tiriti o Waitangi. And when your ancestors and my ancestors signed that document, they did it in the spirit of being safe and in continuing to care for the environment so that it would last for many generations to come. And they did it to make sure that we could all live together without harming one another. And I think that is so important because it is the document that gives us all the right to be here and to live here. But instead, after that was signed, we know that this was not honoured by different parties. And for many iwi across the country, the date and times in which all of our land was taken and stolen is etched into our memories. 17th of January 1866 for my iwi. And that matters because land is the economic basis of any community. It is the economic basis of our sovereignty, and we've been moved off of it. Not just by institutions like this, but by the government as well. So it's no wonder why we are represented in those poverty statistics as well. And we had Elsa talking about representation. It matters because when I look on the TV, I see that I'm a warrior or a gang member, you know, and I'm told that I don't deserve to be here. We're told that our reo doesn't need to be on TV. We're told every day we're squashed down into these boxes, and that's why it matters to have us around the table for people to see that we can be more than that and we can be an active part in determining the tino rangatiratanga for our people. Like Councillor Day said, Te Whanganui-a-Tara was one of the most effectively colonised places in New Zealand, and we played a part in that. You know, and this is about being able to make sure that the decisions we make around this table don't further harm and take away from iwi that we have already taken so much from. And I look at this rohe and people say, how can they make decisions when hardly any of them live there? We were the ones that cut this region up like a cake. You know, going back to that, we cut it up regardless of tribal boundaries, and now you've got iwi who have to participate with Hutt City Council, Wellington City Council, Porirua City Council, the Greater Wellington Regional Council. But we've all been moved away because of all of the different decisions that political institutions have made. I'm thinking about the economic reforms in the 80s that tried to move people into the city, concentrated jobs. It's all of these decisions that these institutions make that mean that we've got that overrepresentation in those statistics. So this is our opportunity to make sure that the decisions that we make are ones that will not lead to that further disenfranchisement and that will make sure that we are not causing any more harm. So that's what I think the value is in it for me. And so I don't want to dwell on that past. I hate coming around this table and having to dwell on the history of colonisation in this country. It hurts to have to hear about it.
Councillor, I'll give you another minute.
Thank you. So I just want us to focus on the future, and I think this is a decision that we can make that will, it's a decision that we can be proud of. It's a decision that we can move forward in. We can be leaders in the space. We don't have to keep dwelling on the past. We can move forward, making the right decisions, making sure that mana whenua are informing that decision making, making sure that we have all of the information that we need to make those good calls. So I want to thank mana whenua for their humility and continuing to engage in this conversation. I want to thank Councillor Day for leading this kōrero around the table, and I really hope that we make the right decision in the spirit of Te Tiriti o Waitangi today, because it's what your ancestors signed up to, it's what my ancestors signed up to, and I know that we can make the right decision for them, so kia ora koutou.
Thanks, Councillor Paul. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Deputy Mayor Free. Okay, so yep, we'll get a list down there. Okay, Deputy Mayor Free.
Thank you. Well, in the course of being on council this triennium, I've had to come to terms with the fact that my past is a colonial past. So George Evans, this is a very interesting book. It mentions Te Whorepori. Also mentions my great-great-grandmothers Thomasina and Eliza Ridderford. So they came on the Adelaide. That's my beginnings here. Go back to March 1840. But it has been a little bit of a painful realisation that although I believe there was genuine good intentions at the beginning, and in fact Maori had their own system of government, it seems, in this book, and some of their own power, that quickly became unbalanced. And I feel it, from the start of this conversation, I felt a responsibility to try and redress that. And this is a historic moment. We are here to give back, willingly give back some agency and some power, because the people that I'm associated with took a disproportionate amount of it, and I acknowledge that. I also believe that we need to do this because the country is clearly moving in this direction. This is a movement which is spreading rapidly like wildfire, and it was very interesting to hear Nanaya Mahuta at the talking about local government reform, and she made it abundantly clear that this is going to be mandatory. So, we can embrace this and we can be leading on this, or we can just delay without any point at all and find that it's going to happen anyway. I'd prefer to be leading, and I want to be leading. What else is there to say? I have trust and confidence that actually it'll be to the benefit of all of us. I think when my people came here, I've said this before publicly, the people that were here to welcome them really helped them. And, I listened to Helmut saying, we need each other. Back then, to build this city, which has been built in 180 years, we needed each other. European people did bring some stuff that Maori people were able to use, and iwi welcomed them and really helped them. It was this man here who actually apparently decided that the Hutt Valley wasn't the best place for the city, and the decision was actually made to relocate it here because of the rivers and the floods and lots of practical difficulties. It's a very interesting story. And it's a story of quite a lot of hardship on both sides. But we're looking to the future. We are moving forward. We're moving forward in a spirit of optimism and partnership, and I really believe it is going to be a really positive and great thing.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Pannett, and I think I saw Councillor Fitzsimon's hand up as well. Yep, so Councillor Pannett.
Well, kia ora, and obviously I'd like to recognise the whenua of this land, and again your humility in demanding what is rightfully yours. And I would just like to gently say that I hope this will be a unanimous vote today, because it is the right thing to do. That we can only justify denying power because of ignorance of our history, and that history is a terrible one and it needs to be put right. And this actually isn't much of a big deal. I'd like to, while this is not about Pākehā, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Ross Davies, because like Mr. Davies, I was also raised in it was a bit raggedy, but a reasonably well-off part of the country. And while I was also fortunate enough to have some education around the treaty in our past in my childhood, I know I still have a long way to go. And I think it was wonderful for a member of our community to acknowledge the feelings of superiority. This is not a failing on Mr. Davies' part, it is a feeling which is instructed upon us, and it is wrong. And so I think that is for all of us as Pākehā to think about. And I guess I'd also just like to support the comments of Councillor Paul. It is outrageous that 50% of our population in prison is Māori, and that the poverty statistics are also heavily weighted towards Māori, in spite of what the Deputy Leader of the Opposition will say. It is actually a problem of colonisation and racism. And until Māori are sitting around the table and putting in place the right policy solutions and have equality, we're going to continue to see all these negative statistics continue, and it's unacceptable. And of course, as we know, thank you, Hui, for pointing out, this is not going to be a white majority country in the near future, and that is a good thing. This is going to bring wonderful things to our country, and so if we are to address those very, very severe historical wrongs, we must give power away, and it's just going to be so wonderful, and me particularly welcome in the environment area, because I'm going to expect to see much better decision making than has been in the past, which has brought us to a terrible state of affairs. So I'm just so honoured and privileged to be able to be in the seat today, to be able to make this decision. And of course, it is only the start, Councillor Day. Thank you for your leadership. We can do much more. But yes, please, let's have a unanimous vote today. I think it'll be a wonderful legacy to leave to the city.
Thanks, Councillor Pannett. Councillor Fitzsimons, then Councillor Young.
Well, ina mihi mana whenua o tēnei rohi, ngā mihi. I just want to start by acknowledging Councillor Day and Councillor Paul for your integrity as Māori leaders at this table, but also for the moral authority you bring to this discussion. I'm certainly grateful for it, and I've learned a lot from both of you, and I think that this decision today will be only just part of your legacy on this council. And I also just wanted to thank mana whenua for your generosity in agreeing to be at our table and help us make better decisions for Wellington, because I think that's what will result from your presence here today. And I guess I just wanted to send a message to our rangatira, Mayor Foster, because I know you are grappling with the decision that you're about to make. And I think that you want to do the right thing, and I think you want to support that. And I guess I just want to send you a message that I think history will judge you well for being on the right side of this issue, and the right side of this issue is asking for mana whenua to join us at this table and to help make good decisions for Wellington. So that decision is yours alone, but I think how you'll be judged as a mayor of this city will in some part depend on the vote that you make today. Kia ora.
Thanks, Councillor Fitzsimons. Councillor Young.
So thank you. So thank you very much for your speeches this morning. So in principle, I don't have a problem with this, but I do have a problem with the process. We consult on everything. We consult on every single car park we're going to do anything to. And I do believe that if we consult on everything but this, then that is a problem with the process. So I will be voting against it. I would hope that we would go to consultation and that Wellingtonians would embrace it. But until we have that consultation, I can't support it. So short, not particularly sweet, but I just want to be straight up about the reasons I'm not supporting it.
Councillor Sparrow, Councillor Rush.
Thank you. And Councillor Young has probably taken the words out of my mouth. I believe change is on its way, but I don't think we've got the mandate to make this change just at this stage to the level it's been done. Thank you for coming in. I think it's been great to have the iwi leaders round this table. I haven't seen many of them before round this table. It's a shame that we haven't been able to meet beforehand rather than in this very formal setting, which is, for good partnership, is not the way to go. Look, I know Helmut said about he could sense there was some reticence, and that's true. But like Councillor Young, I'm concerned that we haven't followed a good process in this in terms of, and I know people will say, well, we shouldn't use process as a barrier, but it is part of bureaucracy, and that's where we get our our mandate to operate within local government legislation. So I'm hopeful that we will continue having good conversations, whatever happens. Probably there's not, we probably understand how the vote's going to go, but I think it's important for democracy that those who don't support the current proposal in its form can say their views in a respectful way. So, but thank you for coming in.
Sorry, Councillor Sparrow. I've got Councillor Sparrow, Rush, Matthews, O'Neill.
Like Ross Davidson, who presented earlier, it's pretty obvious that I am a pale male and over 60, but in my case, brought up not in Remuera, but in working class Woolston and Christchurch. My parents who embraced all and who connected regularly with various ethnicities. So way back in the 60s and 70s, and there was no feeling of superiority or inferiority installed in my family. So I would like to make it clear that I support the bulk of the recommendations in this paper, bar one. I've already voted in favour of mana whenua representation at this table. That's important. In favour of full remuneration, that is important, but not in favour of full voting rights. I know I am not the only Wellingtonian with reservations about any unelected individuals, whoever they might be, being given full voting rights at most, if not all, of our committee meetings. So other than that aspect, I will be happy to support this paper.
Thanks, Councillor Sparrow. Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Worship. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I came armed with a legal opinion to supplement what I had mentioned during the SBC debate. It's from a well-respected set of barristers and does point out some process issues that are that possibly would make this proposal not within the legislation. Nevertheless, I have been undecided on the substance of this. On the one hand, I recognise the democratic accountability argument, but also am quite excited about having the various committees, particularly with the new structure, supplemented with some folks who have got some genuine skills that are relevant to those committees, as well as things like tikanga Māori as well, which I see as being very important to our future. I look at what this is going to cost us. It's $250,000. That's not a small amount of money. We could get another roving crew for that, Councillor O'Neill's weeding program. But actually, having listened to the public participants, it's quite clear that they see value far in excess of another roving crew, all due respect to Eugene Doyle. I do think sovereignty is vested in the Crown. Irrespective of the treaty, the Crown position says that that is the position that all countries in the world actually adopt. Nevertheless, we're talking about regional power sharing. I think that's a bit different, and I think we can make it work within this democracy. I was really impressed with the folks that came and spoke to us, agreed with the humility. Helmut adequately answered my issue on Article the 3rd, I thought. John, your commentary around there being a symbiotic relationship, I think really resonated with me. It made me think about the circuit breaker that we've talked about for this council. And then Karaka talked about joint venture. Well, as an oil and gas lawyer, when you talk joint venture, I get very excited. And I have been trying to get a discussion going around how we could work together in projects like infrastructure, the Mile Point upgrade, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of, I know, disquiet, some uncertainty and so on. But for me, you know, if it all goes wrong, it's not something we can't put back together. I think there's only one way to find out if this is going to work, and that's to give it a go. So I've changed my position. It all comes down to the integrity of the people that came to talk to me. I've got a lot of faith in that.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Rush. Councillor Matthews, O'Neill, Foon.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi mai o hā i te iwi rohi, Ngāti Toa Rangatira me Taranaki Whānui. I guess first of all, I would like to thank our mana whenua partners for their patience and humility, and also for just the inspiring kōrero that we've heard from you every time we've had the opportunity to meet with you. And I particularly want to acknowledge you, Huia Pukatapu, for your many times you've really challenged my thinking, and you know, I think it shows already you are demonstrating what the power of having mana whenua around the table and, you know, getting your perspectives and your input into our decisions will have. So thank you so much. And I guess I would like to sort of, because I have had the opportunity to speak with you and other mana whenua representatives over my chance as a councillor, I do want to sort of say that we have had many opportunities to speak and meet in some formal and informal settings, which I've been very grateful for. I guess, you know, I do think that there is a tendency to, whenever there's an issue that people don't want to support, to raise a problem with the process. And you can always do that because no process is perfect. And, you know, maybe this one isn't perfect as well. But it's also coming very late and after some more than imperfect processes were followed that got us to this place. For example, I don't believe that we have ever probably adequately consulted with mana whenua about anything, and mana whenua were not consulted with when their land was taken away and their rights were extinguished through a variety of legal and illegal methods. So I think that we can't create perfection for this, and we should instead look to play the leadership role that we were elected to do, and to not. You know, there's been quite an interesting, because of Ross Davis's what he said today, we've been talking about superiority, and I think we have to be careful that we don't make our processes, our colonialising processes of our institutions, our laws, our legislations, our votes, give them superior weight. So it's going to be my great pleasure and honour to vote for this, and thank you to everyone, and particularly Councillor Day and Councillor Paul for your leadership. Kia ora.
Thanks, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Neal.
Ngā mihi nui ki te mana whenua. Thank you for your resilience and once again being here today and enduring comments. I would like to start by just placing on the table that our aim as representatives and leaders, and the aim of many people who have come to this table to represent rangatahi and our council, that people that have represented activists and professors and really valuable citizens in Wellington have demonstrated our duty as elected representatives to honour the democracy that we stand in. We ought to be constructing colonial ideologies of superiority and privilege within this institution. It is no surprise that most people's public opinion of elected representative in New Zealand are people that of privilege, and people that are on large salaries, and people that are entitled to represent their community but are criticised for not doing that in such a public way. To the councillors who plan to vote against this paper today, is not adequate to merely provide a nodding acknowledgement to mana whenua at this table anymore. It is time to show up in our actions. This is not good enough, and I find it frankly embarrassing to this institution that we should wedge something in the door of process after we have had months and years of discussion and education by members of our community to do better. For democracy, we may be substantiated by the Local Government Act 2002, but as Pākehā in New Zealand, we are substantiated in our place with the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, whether you are an immigrant or not, or whether you consider yourself to be a person of Aotearoa. We are substantiated by that piece of legislation, and that is a founding document of New Zealand. I would like to close in thanking Councillor Paul and Councillor Day for your advocacy and again your resilience, and I cannot imagine the road before this would have been a lot longer, and it is a privilege to stand here in this historical vote for our council and to support you in this. Kia ora.
And Councillor Foon. Councillor Condi, do you want to speak?
Kia ora tātou, i ngā mihi ki te mana whenua, Ngāti Toa Rangatira and Taranaki whānui. Thank you for, again, your generosity and humility in speaking with us today. And thank you for sharing the kōrero. It helps us to move forward. Most mornings, trying to have a good practice on the day, I awake with gratefulness. And today I am particularly grateful to be here and to be on this table and to be able to make the vote to progress our relationship with mana whenua. To me, the two biggest things to the ways that I could make change are our commitment to a low carbon future and our commitment to our partnership with mana whenua. And they're not separate issues. For me as well, this is the beginning of what should have been, but can be a new normal. I loved hearing that, and I'm excited for it. To my fellow councillors, I urge you not to hide behind or make a decision based on process. This is our chance to do what is right and what is fair, and to do what we need to do to support a fairer society and to see this as an opportunity. Councillor Rush, thank you for acknowledging the prior paper. This is our chance for a reset, double reset today. We can do this. It's an awesome chance. So I guess that my vote will be about resetting us, but this is also for our, thank you Councillor Pannett too, our environment. This is the opportunity we have together, and the environment is for our rangatira, our tamariki and our mokopuna, and that is who I will make the vote for today. Kia ora.
Thanks. I don't think we've got Councillor Wolfe online, so Councillor Condi.
Kia ora, everyone. I just want to reflect on some of the comments we've had about consultation and process. And, you know, I acknowledge that we haven't consulted on this decision, and perhaps normally we would have. But I think for me, it comes back to one of the things that Helmut said when he was sitting here speaking with us, which is that this should be a mana enhancing process, that this is about putting mana whenua to stand as equal partners with us. And my view, and which I continue to hold, is that a wide public consultation could not possibly be mana enhancing for our mana whenua partners, and it would simply be unfair of us to put them through that. I absolutely understand and acknowledge the role of consultation, but I think that in this case that concern for mana whenua trumps any concern for consultation. I do think that we have the mandate to make this decision. We were elected and we have that mandate to do so. Councillor Sparrow, I understand your concern about having unelected members with voting rights. But for me, I think I've always felt that on our Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, we have unelected members with voting rights. And in this case, this is, you know, we've got two members on that committee who have voting rights. And so for me, it's a pretty low bar when we're saying we want to give mana whenua the same rights as we're offering to accountants. that you know, they should have the right to come here and vote. They are the mana whenua and the katiaki of this rohe, of which where we all live here. I'm very proud to be able to vote for this, but I can't say I feel good about it, because I actually feel incredibly uncomfortable that you're coming here today and thanking us for giving this to you, thanking us for having you here. That makes me deeply uncomfortable. I am proud to vote to support this today, but I don't think we should be being thanked for returning something to you that was always yours. I think often about fault and responsibility, and I think about I'm a parent, I've got a young son, and I think about if he, for example, was at school and he stole something from another child, and he comes home and he says, I find out that he stole this. It's not my fault that my son stole something, but it is my responsibility to set it right and fix it. And that's how I feel about this as well. And I wouldn't expect, if my son had stolen something from another child, I wouldn't expect that child to have to come and ask. I wouldn't expect them to thank me for returning it to them. That's just what we should be doing in this case. I feel very, very strongly about that. So I am proud to be able to vote in support of this today. I look forward so much to having your wisdom at our table and to moving forward with an equal partnership from today. Kia ora.
Thanks, Councillors. I said I would listen to the debate, and I have been listening to the debate very carefully, and also to the public participation. And thank you also to our iwi representatives for coming in for the kōrero that we've heard today, and for the way in which it's been delivered. And I think the word humility has been used a lot, so thank you for that. We really appreciate the gentleness and humility with which those messages have been delivered, because this is a kōrero which is challenging. For me, it's very challenging, and I think Councillor Fitzsimons, you reflect on saying, I've been wrestling with this one. This is a tough one to talk about. I supported the Māori ward because that was, for me, was based on the democratic principle of one person, one vote, and I supported remuneration at the committee, but I didn't support the voting right at the table. And that's the issue I've struggled with, because our democracy is based on essentially one person, one vote. And so I understand whichever way people are going to vote, and I think we should all honour that, because that is democracy, which allows people to vote, because there are some competing principles in this. Some people have talked about process. I would have liked to have a process which allowed us to have a conversation with our community, because this to me is quite a substantial governance conversation. And I think, Councillor Condi, I have more faith in our community. I know there'll be some people in our community who are probably always the unhelpful ones, who would have had a crack at us and a crack at this regardless. But I think, what we've heard from, in the public participation this morning, and we heard in the public participation last week, I think we should have some faith that our community would have stepped up and said, actually, they would have had a good conversation about it. And I think that would have been something I would have liked to have. I think could have been enhancing. Who you mentioned that, something about we often don't do due diligence. Now, I don't think that as a council we've done particularly great due diligence on this because of the way that this has been put in front of us, but we've still got to make a decision about it. And there were some comments made that I think Councillor Calvert, you made the comment about you don't believe that we have a mandate, and I understand that. I agree with that, because none of us stood on this particular mandate, and we didn't go and ask our community about it. But we still have to make a decision today, regardless of that issue of mandate. I think, because the paper didn't actually discuss that in great detail, that this takes us beyond where other councils are at, but I'm not 100% sure of that because we don't have that detail. What is clear to me is that the legislation is very open. We can do this, but we don't. So it is a choice that we make. However, for me, this decision is not, when I was wrestling with this decision is not the end of the world, because it's a decision that we cannot bind a future council to make. And I think, Councillor Rush, you made the comment, you said give it a go, that we should give this a try and that we take that leadership opportunity. And I thought that was a very useful comment. Now, I wanted to remind you that in this term we've moved to bring mana whenua representation into Wellington Water, and I may miss some things out here, into our regional planning governance and into, God help us, into Let's Get Wellington Moving, to the extent we actually had meetings about it. But we've brought mana whenua into those various tents. The question is about the tent that we're around this table here. Now, I think that iwi representation without question will add value to our decision making, and I think we've heard that today. I think, and I certainly, there was a conversation, Helmut mentioned meeting together, Councillor Day, you were part of that conversation as well, meeting together to sort of work on the whole thing of a strategic relationship, so moving beyond the MOU but to a strategic relationship, and I absolutely welcome that. I really want to say that I think we need a kōrero which is based on
not feeling threatened, because there is some feeling threatened about some of these things, but inclusivity of all of our heritages. And there is some history which is very, very challenging, and Helmut in particular mentioned that. He said a degree of honesty about the past, but he said that is the past and a line's been drawn. So the decision is where we move to from here. Our country is changing. I've got absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever. And who you said the future is watching. And I've been listening very, very carefully, and I think that on balance, I'm prepared to say that while this is not something which has been consulted on, while there is the one person, one vote, but I think we should give this a go, and that we should reach out in the spirit of partnership and say we want to work together. And I hope that in 18 months' time, that we can all look at that and celebrate that and say, actually, that's blimmin' good for Wellington. It's good for mana whenua. It's good for Wellington. It's good for all of us. And that is where I've landed, listening to all the conversation. So thank you very much, and I'm going to pass back to you, Councillor Day. And I understand that you might have a waiata at the end of your kōrero as well.
It's looking that way, isn't it? I just want to start by acknowledging you, Mayor Foster, for taking a really brave step there. I know that it's been genuinely a challenging issue, and I think the challenge represents the challenge that it has been for Māori in Aotearoa. So you've probably gone through an experience which is akin to the way that people have felt when there's that feeling of loss or change. I just want to acknowledge the comments that others have made, particularly around consultation, that it was a lack of consultation that has got us to this place in the first place. When the city was named, pretty sure that Māori would not have said, yeah, Wellington's a good name for this place, considering they would have been saying, ko Waiia, who is he? And also when the Raupō tax was introduced, which I mentioned at the last meeting, I'm pretty sure that Māori were not consulted on that. So not that it's not a tit for tat in this situation, but what I'm trying to point out is that when consultation didn't happen in the first place, that is why we are in this situation where we're having to do something which actually feels right. And so it is really awkward for us, but it's really important. I want to acknowledge Councillor Paul's kōrero about how painful it is to go through this. Thank you, and I really appreciate your bravery in identifying that, because it is true. It's really hurtful, really harmful to us as Māori to be here having this kōrero. People are often saying to me, I don't know how you do it, and I just say, look, it's something that we have to do, and we will get there, and people are doing things to restore our faith in humanity. So thank you to Councillor Rush and Mayor Foster for showing that leadership today. I also just want to acknowledge that tomorrow's the day that the treaty was signed in Te Whanganui-a-Tara out on the harbour, and so it feels really, really appropriate. Unfortunately, this meeting couldn't be tomorrow because it's scheduled today, but it feels like we're doing a little bit of a circle back to actually honour what was agreed to during that signing. I also want to acknowledge the fact that we have non-elected members already on committees, and that no one has ever challenged that or questioned it, but it seems to be that it gets challenged and questioned in this scenario, and I think that we need to be brave and understand that actually this is the right thing to do, and we've accepted that with our financial advice, and so we should be accepting it with our cultural and important expertise that comes with mana whenua. I also want to acknowledge my colleagues who have showed their unwavering support throughout this process, who have continually nudged me and supported me, Councillor Fitzsimons, Matthews, Pannett, Condi, Foon, O'Neill and Free. Thank you so much for just always being there and saying, yes, this is the right thing to do. And I know, Deputy Mayor Free, you've been through a really important journey exploring what it meant for your tupuna arriving in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, and I feel like it's been a really important process for you to go through. And I just want to say that around the consultation as well, that by deciding today, we're actually showing faith in our community, that they would have said, just get on with it, guys. You've been elected. Come on, you're being told by experts and by mana whenua that this is the right thing to do. Get on with it. And I really don't want to open up for more racist debate in our community. We're going to have to go through a little bit of that possibly with Māori Ward, but hopefully not. I think it's important that we don't let that kind of kōrero come into our council and come out into the community too often. Actually, I was at Taupua District Council yesterday watching them agree to do Māori Ward, and one of the councillors said that she had heard a parent trying to explain to their children why there was this letter at the library about why Māori Ward was bad, and she said she hopes she never ever has to hear a parent explain to their child why this would be a bad thing in Aotearoa when it just made no sense. So I want to make sure that we're not inviting those public conversations which are actually just super harmful and terrible for our rangatahi and our tamariki and our mokopuna to grow up in that environment. They just don't need to. We're going to move forward and we're going to make good decisions for Aotearoa, and we're going to do that in true partnership. So kia ora, and thank you very much everybody for your votes and support today. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora. Right, now, councillors, I think, is there anybody who wants to take any one of those votes separately? Because I got the impression that there was. Number one? Okay, so we'll vote on number one and then we'll vote on the rest. Is Councillor Wolf not online? Okay. Okay, thank you. And the rest? Councillor O'Neill? Yeah, a council's automatic. Yeah. Okay, that's passed. Amawi.
Kia ora tātou, te miha tunei ki au koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
Councillors, I'm inclined to take a break for 5 minutes because I think it would be an appropriate thing to do. Hui, did you want to wait till John gets back, or you want to?
Please.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, we've resumed yet? We just make sure we're back online and everything? Yeah, we're good? Right, okay, good. We're good to go.
Oh, kia ora tātou. We just wanted to thank you for this opportunity, and I know that there was discussion there that we don't need to thank you, but we do. It's about the right people being at the table at the right time, and that's what we've arrived at today, and so the right decision has been made. And so we're very pleased and very happy with where you've arrived at, and we just wanted to say thank you for that, and we look forward to working with you through the different committees and adding value. And I think when we stop and look at, if we take a baseline of where we are today and look at where we arrive at maybe in a year or 2 years, we may see that there's been a monumental shift, and we'll know that this is the right thing that we've done for Wellington. And as Hui was talking about the impact across the country, it'll be the right thing for the country. So kia ora, thank you very much.
it's been quite clear that there's a huge shift already at this table. The various times we've been here, the increase of te reo being used, the way your councillors have challenged themselves and then educated themselves to be able to mihi, to be able to show appropriate tikanga when people come to the room or come to the table and offer their kōrero. Your mannerisms and your etiquette in terms of whakaaro Māori around manaakitanga is becoming very much more evident at this table. And so I wanted to acknowledge that in particular. It's not an easy thing to do, to bring yourselves up to speed so quickly. And as I said, this has really only just happened since our discussions started last year. So I'm extremely impressed, to be honest, that people have gone out of their way to do that and bring themselves into this space. It's clear evidence of moving forward together. So it's wonderful to see. So I wanted to mihi to you guys regarding that. Thank you so much. And even if you don't have the reo, the āhua, we say the āhua, the feeling of this table is also moving in that way. You may recall one of the first times that we, and I, well, particularly myself, sat at this table, there were some unspoken tensions at that time. I'd like to say today that there isn't today. I do feel that the āhua has shifted and that we are meeting each other on a more respectful common ground. Evidence of growth in that space, so really happy that that has been the case. So kia ora koutou, ngā mihi mahana ki a koutou katoa. Te wairua, te āhua o te wairua, e pai rawa ki a hau, ki a mātou, taranaki whānui, nō reira kia ora tātou. So, little waita. E ngā iwi o te motu nei, e raukurara tēnei, e te tia nei e te ati awa, e te iti I te rai te katoa. E ngā iwi o te motu nei, no iara te whenua nei, manakiti ana iwi, e te iti I te rai te katoa. Kua tū a te piti, no rungai ana mai pai, no rungai ana mai tika, I tōna ngā kaupai. This little waita speaks to basically under the teachings of Te Whiti, speaks to the way we behave towards each other, doing things correct and doing things right. And today was certainly an exhibition of that. So, nō reira, kia mihi ana ki a koutou katoa, kia ora. Thank you.
Well, councillors, we'll carry on then with, excuse me, with the meeting. And in the spirit of inclusivity, which I think is about our advisory groups as well, Councillor Matthews.
Kia ora koutou. Pleasure to introduce this paper. I would like to start by thanking officers, particularly Sean, Heidi and Janie for their mahi, getting us to this point. The advisory groups add so much to our mahi and they add so much to our city, and you know, all of the people that they bring with them when they're in the room, all of the people that they represent. I would like to thank all of the existing members of the advisory groups who do such amazing work. We've seen some of them today, and I'm looking forward to welcoming new members, both new members to the existing groups, and also to welcoming a Rainbow Advisory Group to our whānau. And one of the small changes in the paper that you'll see is I'd like to thank Councillor O'Neill, who's going to be the responsible council with that group. She's been part of the discussions, and thank you, Terry. And she's also going to second this paper. She's been an absolutely great person to have. I know she's as passionate about the advisory groups as I am. And Councillor Fitzsimons, who is going to be the alternate. So thank you for those two councillors. Basically, this paper we've discussed many times, but this time we've got the combined terms of reference to just support support the work better of these groups. There are some small amendments to the substantive to tidy up some words. We're going to go away and do a bit more work on the media aspect because we want to have it be more enabling and positive about media comment from these groups rather than sort of prescriptive and sort of don't do it or, get permission. We want to be about council supporting their media role, to clear up some sort of language about gender. I think when we talk about a review next year, we're changing that to evaluate because it is not it's not external, it's not a big review. We might not see any changes, but we just want to make sure that everything's working correctly. And I just want to end with quote from a wise friend who said that we should ask ourselves 4 questions. Who is not in the table? Who is not at the table? Who is not in the room? Are you only hearing the loudest voices? What are the voices of the silent saying? And I think those are really good questions to ask ourselves, and the advisory groups help us to hear more voices. Thank you so much.
And that's seconded by Councillor Neal. Thank you. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Today is a great day because we are delivering on a lot of the mahi that we've been working over in the last year. I wanted to start by acknowledging the amount of mahi, not just from councillors or advocates within the community, but within the organisation as well. In the year and a half that I've been on council, there has been a massive shift to empowering people that are a part of the rainbow community and making sure that their voices are heard. We have had years and years and years of work and lobbying from community activism and advocates to eventuate to how queer people see themselves in our city. And before I came on, we had the Rainbow Crossing. We've got history walks that are recognised, the different LGBTQIA plus history in our city. We've also got Carmen represented in different spots, and we've got lots of murals facilitated through our Arts and Culture and Murals Department. Being a good ally in terms of rainbow people in our city looks like walking alongside our community, and this is something this advisory group has been asking for a really long time. I'd like to make specific notes that when we run events in our city and our organisation makes a stand for rainbow issues, that is really important that that advice is facilitated through many other policy processes. For example, this particular sector has raised really large issues with safety, with housing, with homelessness, with arts, with planning and culture and events in our city. And this kind of mahi is being facilitated through the social contract, through reforms to our social housing and city housing. And we are also looking at a really interesting events portfolio with Wellington NZ and how we empower our small artists and our independent artists, and those are some really live policy issues that we could use in a Rainbow Advisory Group for. To note as well, I was lucky enough to be a part of an internal Queer at Council event to celebrate queer people at council, and a lot of the work that was facilitated through there. One of the other people that was on the panel with myself mentioned that over the week of Homegrown, that was an example of an event that we hosted in our city that just many members within the rainbow community wouldn't even think about going outside over that entire weekend, and that we do need to do better. And that was a really clear example because it's not something that had come across my mind, but for many other people in our community it was a large concern. And then lastly, I just wanted to conclude by thanking some people because it is far and wide. I'd like to thank the Mayor for hosting and taking on that responsibility of having an LGBTQIA plus monthly forum with members of the community, and to note that this advisory group will kind of take over the place of that, and that you're super really welcome to continue being informed. I'd like to thank, particularly in the Mayor's office, Sarah, Owen and Maddie have been really large advocates for this, and they have worked super hard to put on a large community-wide hui on May the 10th, and that will be open to everybody, and would be awesome to see all our councillors there too. I'd like to thank members of different advocacy groups. We've got GMA, Inside Out, Rainbow Wellington. We've got a plethora of awesome organisers there. We've also had Sean Johnson, Hayley, Janie.
Councillor, can I get you to wind up, please?
Yes, will do, yeah. Sean, Vic, Janie and Hayley and all the other council officers that have taken on this work and should deserve to be acknowledged today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Pannett.
Kia ora, and obviously I'd like to thank staff and my colleagues for leading the charge. And what a great day, because we've just righted a historical wrong to some extent, and now we're going to right another one. So our rainbow communities have suffered enormous discrimination, hatred, bigotry over the centuries, and so it's right that the small step is taken. I would just like to make a point, though, that look, it's great that we have advisory groups, but unless we actually make significant change out in the community, then it's not enough. We've had it's an area I'm familiar with, we've had an accessibility advisory group for some years, and yet I still think there is a lot of progress to be made. So when people come here and give their valuable time and skills, we need to do more to meet their needs. People have a right to be angry even about the barriers that still exist, and so in agreeing to this, let's just, I hope that we'll collectively as an institution make a real commitment to making sure that there are no barriers to any group in the city that has historically had those barriers, because it's wrong, plain and simply wrong. So again, thank you to colleagues and to the many people that do give up their time to make our city a better place.
Anyone else? Councillor Paul.
I just wanted to really mahi to you, Councillor Matthews and Councillor O'Neill, for this mahi. It's really, really important. And I felt to think when this was going through SPC when Councillor Foon thanked ERG, so I just wanted to publicly note my thanks to ERG for all of their knowledge and expertise that they bring to the table, and sitting with them and finding out stuff going on the ground that I didn't know about. So I just want to mahi to them as well. And I just wanted to ask, I know that there's really good takatapui representation in the group, but I just ask that that identity is valued, you know, being gender and sexually diverse is very Indigenous and native to this country and throughout the Pacific and to Polynesia, and so embracing that in a way to help to decolonise that space I think would be really cool and interesting, and I have every confidence in you and also in Claire as well that you'll be able to do that, because you are both so dedicated to those communities and I know it means everything to them, so thank you so much for all of the work that you do.
Kia ora, anyone else? Can I just say, I want to make just a couple of comments, because I think to me the conversation which we've had today, starting right from the beginning of having the Interfaith Council coming in, and then the decision that we've just made in terms of iwi representation, and then this decision, they are all about, to me, the whole thing, the whole kōrero of inclusiveness. And I think that is, I think we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much, but I think we have made some big strides in inclusiveness over the last 18 months. And I acknowledge that there was work being done on that well before, but I think we've been making some big strides. So I think today is a good day to recognise all of those things. So I thank you for your work in this, Councillor Matthews, Councillor O'Neill, but thank you all councillors for your support for this mahi.
Yeah, just very briefly. First of all, thank you to the Mayor, and I agree. I think we are bringing more people, you know, and saying it's important to us that you are here. I just want to reassure you, Councillor Pannett, that the AAG are actually in very good heart, and they, with the appointment of a senior accessibility advisor, with really active ELT participation, and you know, don't want to blow my own trumpet, but with a very supportive councillor, they are, you know, they are feeling that there is change happening, and they're very excited about it. And I also just want to acknowledge your point that there's a kind of the definition of the community in here, which is very important for that rainbow community, has, you know, lists a lot of Pacific, identities and intersectionality for this community is essential, and it's a really important. Someone actually at the meeting when we were discussing the criteria said, look, we just don't want to see a bunch of white guys in power suits. And we think that with the people involved, there is very little chance of that occurring. So intersectionality will be extremely important to that group. So thank you everyone for your support.
If you can all vote, please. We'll take them all as one. Yep, okay. Councillor Sparrow. Moment in the sun.
Right, the proposed road stopping of land adjoining 12 Endeavour Street, Lyall Bay. This is a very straightforward case of council selling 70 square metres of unformed legal road here. And so I'm simply moving the recommendations in the officer's report, which allows them to proceed to the next step in I think, a 6-step process. Seconded by...
I'm happy to second.
Right.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor. 6-step process is daunting. Wish to speak?
Look, I don't think a lot needs to be said because actually we discussed this well and truly in previous committee meetings. I think it's pretty straightforward. I can't see that there's any issues at all, really. So I'll be supporting it.
Anyone else? I can see that. But the body language says let's vote now. So let's, Councillor Sparrow, I don't think you need to write a reply, so we'll vote. We're not quite there. Councillor Foon. Yeah. Okay, that's passed. Okay, councillors, I'm going to vacate the chair now. Councillor Deputy Mayor Free is going to take over, and well done.
Well done. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, so we'll now move on to the gambling review of the, what have we called it? Gambling paper, anyway. And I'd like to invite Councillor Paul to introduce the paper.
Kia ora mai anō. I'd like to dedicate this 2 minutes and 57 seconds to the man himself, Jim Lewis, for all of your mahi. You've done an outstanding job. You've created lots of conversations in the community. I think the government has heard that they need to do better on funding some of these organisations that rely on the funding. Who was that group that we had come to them that accept no pokie funding? Yeah, see, there are good examples out there of people who are able to make it work. So, yeah, I want to just also thank the Problem Gambling Foundation for all of their advocacy and hard work in getting us here. And, yeah, I'm just really proud to be able to bring to you this policy which says no new machines in our communities, no relocations and no mergers. So, kia ora, look forward to your vote. And seconded by Councillor Fitzsimons.
Councillor Fitzsimons, do you want to have do you speak? No? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this? Councillor Young.
So I'd just like you to know I did not get out of the wrong side of bed this morning, but it seems to be the day when I'm kind of grumpy about everything. So I think we all accept that this is virtue signalling. It's going to make no difference to problem gamblers. They can go on their phones, as they are in increasing numbers, and bet, and the money goes off to the United States. So this decision will come at great cost to the Wellington communities. We know, and with immediate effect, this is not a slow burner, we know the New Zealand Community Trust is already declining all applications from council-owned organisations, so that has begun. I think they've already turned down something from the zoo, but at the same time, so these organisations get affected, but the problem gamblers will find other ways. You know, it's an insidious thing. I mean, my main gambling is really standing for election every 3 years, and so you know, it's one vice I don't have. But if we want to do something about gambling, this is not going to make any difference. All the proceeds of online gambling go abroad. the local communities miss out. Some of the poorest schools are the ones that rely on the trust for school uniforms and things like that. So I believe that this is shooting ourselves in the foot and yet feeling good about it, which is not a very smart thing to do. So I will be voting against this, but that won't come as a surprise to you because I've been pretty consistent about that.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Very briefly, as I said in the debate, this is not the end of the world, nor is it saving the world. There are specific things about pokies that are addictive in certain ways. That doesn't mean it just is a direct transfer to other forms of gambling. There are things like internet access, privacy, the combination with being in a social environment, all of those things that do make it specific. And we here have heard directly from both the experts and the addicts that they want us to do this. But also that it's a gradual impact, and we haven't seen many parts of the country have had a sinking lid policy for many years with no detrimental effects. And if there is a threat from the industry to withdraw funding because of the decision we make, it actually to me, reinforces that decision is the right decision because the worthiness of the cause is not related to whether or not we have a sinking lid policy. And actually, I think that's completely inappropriate that is to occur.
Thank you. Councillor Sparrow.
Oh, so can I just say, sorry.
I don't think you're allowed to in council, sorry.
And points of order on council because it wasn't the industry, it was the trust, which is not the industry.
Okay, point of order, right. Councillor Sparrow.
Yeah, we went through most of this at the SBC meeting, and I indicated there I was very sympathetic to the sinking lid policy, and I think it will take a long time for major effects to be felt by community groups, and I think most of us hopefully really understood the position of these community groups, and that's why an amendment, or part of the package was that we do our best to look to central government or advocate to central government to replace the funding that will be taken away from community groups over time. But I probably won't be voting for the sinking lid policy, although I don't have a problem with it going through.
Thank you. Councillor Rush.
Thanks. I guess my position is similar to Councillor Young. I think that actually a lot of people enjoy playing pokies. Most of them do. Most of them are safe. This is actually going to hurt a lot of people and not necessarily cure anything. It's very hard to make these arguments when the first thing is you hear is that it's not going to make any changes at all. Makes you wonder why we're doing it. I am quite concerned to hear about, and it's not the first time I've heard it, that the industry body or the trust, whoever makes the decisions, is making their decisions as a consequence of how we vote today. And so I'm thinking I might employ my barrister to have a look at that. I did actually speak with the CEO and pointed out that I would be very, very doubtful that how councillors vote in this sort of area could be a relevant consideration for how they distribute funds. So I will follow that up, but otherwise I won't support.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Are there any other people that wish to have a say? No? Councillor Paul, would you like a right of reply? Okay. In that case, we'll vote. That is carried. Okay, and that brings us, I think, to the close of our business, so it's been a busy and very productive meeting. We will now stand to say the closing karakia. Una here, una here, una here, ki te. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we need.
15.